Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Territories Talk. I am your host, Shayna Smith Archer, saying hello to everyone from the beautiful Virgin Islands. Also, sending out greetings. We haven't been here in a while, but I know my co hosts are someplace in the wings. So, shout out to Miss Shirley Osborne from Montserrat, as well as Mr. Thomas Christopher, famous out of Bermuda. Again, as always, we come on to, encourage ourselves, inform ourselves, unite our overseas territory family and the wider Caribbean region about various topics that's currently affecting us or things that we think that you guys need to know more about and be aware of. And tonight's topic is, I believe, one of those where, it's not much of a mainstream, but we hear about it a lot in different avenues. So, I am excited and looking forward to the conversation tonight with our guest as it relates to women in STEM. And she has some background in artificial intelligence. So again, AI is all the rage now. And we're going to learn more about that tonight. So please join me in welcoming Miss Kameron Young, hailing from Bermuda, but you're currently in the UK,
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
All right.
Mhm.
All
So,
right. Well, tell us a little about yourself, Cameron, and then we'll start to unpack this. Oh, before I do that, let me also, we haven't been here in a while. Shout out to our media partners, Cayman Mall Road Facebook page, Radio TCI, Montserrat ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands CBN Radio, FM 90.9, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Sabre, PJFE FM 93.9, and Barbados' CBC Channel 8. We also want to send out our love and prayers to those that have been affected by the hurricane recently. So, definitely hoping for the best for everyone as they go through their recovery. And, I know most countries in the Windward Islands have been mobilized. So, there's lots of support coming from all across the region to help out our neighbors. So, I definitely applaud us for making sure that has been happening. So happy for that as well. All right. All right, Miss Young,
hello.
tell us about yourself.
Sure. So, hi everyone, especially to my family back home in Bermuda. Just wanted to say a special thank you to them for joining me. My name is Cameron Young, originally from Bermuda, and I'm currently studying biomedical engineering here in London at Queen Mary University. Actually, graduating in a few weeks. Woohoo! So they're excited about that. I've been here for about 4 years now, pursuing my studies. Before that, I had a gap year in Sevilla, Spain, and now I'm pursuing my passions a little bit more about giving back to the community as I started a podcast called Cameron's Lab Dive In back in October 2023, which I'm sure we'll be talking to a bit more later. So I don't want to go into too much detail, but that's a little bit more about myself, and I'll pass it back over to yourself.
Okay. All right. So I was saying to you pre-show, we're gonna start with the bottom of your bio and get, kind of like the basic stuff out of the way. So in there it has that you're an avid reader. So I'm curious to know, what are you currently reading?
Yes. Well, I'm an avid reader, but I'm also a final year student, so I must admit that I haven't had as much time for reading as I would love.
Uh-huh. We've been
But I
studying
did
for
recently.
exams, basically.
Yeah, exams have really kind of taken over my life, but it's over
Okay.
now. So I've been reading a little bit more for a book I picked up actually a few months ago, but it's called Unmasking AI by Dr. Joy Bulamwini, and it was
Mhm.
just a little bit of an insight into her research and how she's come so far, and just giving a little bit more insights into the different things that she's been learning about, like as well as the book says, unmasking AI. So I'm not sure if you heard about the experiments that she had done when she was back in MIT, but she was
Mhm.
looking at having when she was doing her algorithm, it wasn't working unless she put on this white-faced mask, and that was the only time that I recognized her. So I was
Mhm.
really interested for myself as somebody going more into AI and starting to learn about it more, just to get her perspective on the biases and how we can create fair data sets and start to include ourselves in all of this AI. So I liked one of the quotes that she has, which is, "If you have a face, you have a place in the world of AI." And I just find that so fascinating, and I hope to take that into my own research later.
Awesome. I think I may have heard an interview with her on a podcast where she was talking about those types of things
Mhm.
because there's digital biases that we're not a lot of persons aren't aware of.
Mhm.
So, it's something that, we do have to pay closer attention to, especially for those of us that are, the engineers and the designers of these things. So
Definitely.
that's pretty cool. So why did you decide to study biomedical, actually, in
Wow.
terms of biomedical science in
Uh,
engineering?
I think I have to take you a little bit further back to explain that one, to be quite honest.
Okay, go right ahead.
So it all started with my grandfather. So he gave me my first screwdriver when I was 3 years old, and he
Hmm.
would have me change the outlet covers with him around the house. So just like him and I running around doing all the different things. My mom would be like, "She's a girl, you don't have to have her doing all this stuff." I loved it. Just like following him around. He would have me on his lap while we played with computer games, and he would secretly show me things like Excel and Word. So I'm thinking it's a game, but in reality, he's showing me how to use a computer and how to really solve problems and think for myself. And then
Hmm.
also just following my mom around the house while she was on her laptop and learning different things. So that really sparked my interest in science and technology. And then it only developed further as I got to more into middle and high school because I started to see more different science experiments. I went to BHS and we did quite a few different experiments for our science classes. And for example, one of them was I had asked my chemistry teacher if we could follow this experiment that I saw on YouTube, which was just like putting some acid on top of sugar and it turns into carbon. And that was one of the first times where we got to do an experiment that I wanted to do, that I found really interesting, and I was so excited by that. So just, like, being able to be curious really sparked my interest in engineering because engineering is all about solving problems and solving challenges, and that's something that I absolutely love to do. So it really started from a young age, and then my mom and my grandpa fostered that curiosity to where I am now.
Okay. All right. So that I can definitely relate to because my father was a car mechanic. So again, learning about tools and how to fix things. And my mother is or was a teacher. She's retired now. And she got us a science kit. So you had all these little home experiments that we could do. So yeah, I definitely was in love with science from very early on because it kind of explains life.
Yeah,
And I think that's also how I, decided to become an engineer because physics, was one of those subjects that I truly, truly loved and appreciated. So it was about the immutability of it all.
yeah.
It is what it is, people. But
Yep.
again, using that to solve problems and being able to analyze what's happening and coming up with solutions for it. So I think that's really great. And in biomedical engineering, kind of
Mm.
explain to courses what that particular field does.
Sure. The best way I like to break it down is to kind of think of it as solving the world's problems, but from more of a medical standpoint. So rather than just being an engineer and solving, like, oh, I need to build this building, what do I need? It's more, I have a person and I need to make sure that they're walking or I need to make sure that they can eat properly or hear. So it's really
Mhm.
just solving people's problems and making their lives better. For example, like a hip implant. So a lot of us will have to go for those eventually. Hopefully not anytime soon, but you will have to go for those eventually. And one of the things that we really focus on in our classes is hip implants because of how often they're used. So we look
Okay.
at different materials that you can use for those and making sure that they are compatible with the human body rather than just, throwing in a random metal or some kind of plastic and then it
Yeah.
deteriorates and causes more problems. So
Mhm.
as an engineer, your job is to not only build something that works, but also build something that's functional so that people can actually use it and it can last them quite a long time. A lot of the things that I quite like is that we get to look at tissue engineering, which when I first heard about it, I was like, "What is that?" But it's more looking at just that biocompatibility again, to making sure that whatever products or whatever materials that you're using in a person can actually be used for quite a while, and you get that durability and also being able to eventually be biocompatible with the persons. That's something that just means, like, it works well in the body and doesn't cause any issues. So
Yeah.
I think biomedical engineering it's quite a wide field because there's so many different applications. I'm really talking about like implants and tissue engineering, but of course there's things like wheelchairs or different prosthetics and also like hearing aids. Anything really medical kind of problems that you can solve, it's usually a biomedical engineer that would help out
Okay.
with that.
Okay. And again, I guess we don't even think about the fact that, a cane
Mhm.
isn't just something that's made, but it actually
Yeah,
has to be designed and engineered
exactly.
before it's done. And, imagine when we talk about things like valve replacements and heart sets, even more complex
Yeah,
and involves a lot more engineering that has to be involved. Because, like you're saying, we're putting something foreign into the human body, and we have to ensure that, it is going to work and help rather than, hurt or
Make it
injure
worse.
the patient. Yeah. So that's really important. I remember having a conversation with a high school class last year about construction, the construction field and careers in construction. And I said to them, I said, everything in this classroom had to be designed by somebody.
Mm,
It had to be engineered by somebody. Even though, we take it for granted, it's a desk. But somebody actually designed this. It was engineered to make sure, again, when you sit at it, it stands up and it
yeah.
does what it is it's supposed to do. So, the engineers, we drive life.
Yeah.
Yeah, we drive day to day life, and a lot of times it's like we take it for granted that
Mm,
these things just exist because we've had them for so long. Versus when we have the new inventions and we hear about innovation, that
mm.
we get excited about it. All right. Well,
Exactly.
I wish you all the best of luck in that field
Thank you.
and understanding now some more about your background. I can see why in terms of tonight's topic, you wanted to speak about women in STEM. So let's break that down first by explaining what is STEM. Because persons may have heard about it and not very clear as far as what STEM is. No, it's not the middle of the plant.
Yeah. I
The
get that
branch.
one quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, so we can cross that out. So yeah, so share a little bit. What is STEM and
Sure.
why is it important?
Okay. I will talk about this more from my own perspective. So STEM, it's an acronym and it stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. It used to be STEAM, where it had art in there, but then they kind of took that bit out, or you can have it interchangeably.
Hmm.
To me, STEM is just a I like to think of it as the way it combines all of my personal interests and things that I've always wanted to pursue, and it just puts it into this one big industry that you wouldn't really otherwise think about. So, for example, in the science side of things, I first started off looking at genetics research with Dr. Krika Weldon. She's one of my mentors. So we were looking at the TAS2R38 gene, and through her guidance and her mentorship, I was able to run the first ever genetic study in Bermuda for the TAS2R38 gene. We were looking at the prevalence, like if you have this TAS2R38 gene, it's basically whether or not you can taste bitter things. So we wanted
Hmm.
to see like if a person had that, would they be more susceptible to eating sugar? And apparently it was, and we linked that to diabetes back in Bermuda, but that's a whole 'nother conversation that I don't mind going into
Oh.
if you're interested. Um, so and then from there, I started looking at technology. So I'm still very into robotics. I hope to be a surgeon and robotics engineer later, but looking at robotics, so that's things like, mm, how do I describe a robot? It's just anything that's moving really, it's a mechanical thing. So
Mhm.
sometimes they're autonomous and then sometimes they just follow a set task. Most of the time now we're trying to make things more autonomous and that's where AI starts to come in a bit more. So that's more the technology side, but also software, like more not engineering, software, more
Mhm.
computer based. That would all be under the technology category. And then you have engineers like us, so things like electronical, biomedical, creating things
Mhm.
like, for example, the glasses that you're wearing. So just things that can help people
Yeah.
with their daily life and things that you wouldn't think about, like a desk, like you said, or perhaps just like the holder for my phone right now.
Mhm.
Different little products that you wouldn't think about, but there's an engineer behind that really challenging themselves and thinking about you as the end user and how long you would need something like that to last. So just like little things that an engineer would think about. And then math, of course,
Yeah.
which goes across all of them in my opinion.
Yeah.
None of them will be working without math. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's something that I think most of the younger students don't wanna hear because you think, "Oh, I'm just gonna build this and it's gonna be amazing." But then you get there
Mhm.
and you're like, "Oh, what do you mean I have to calculate the amount of force that's gonna be applied to this object? Oh,
Yeah.
no."
Yeah.
So it's
At
just
least
little
three, at
things like
least
that.
three calculus classes, a
Yeah.
couple algebras,
Oh,
some
yeah.
geometry in there, and
Never ends.
differential equations. I actually literally did so much math. I had a minor in math.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's a lot. That's a lot
and
of work.
in electrical engineering, especially looking at wireless communication,
Mm,
that was one of the things too. Again, just to encourage persons when they're thinking about the different aspects of the STEM, because we tend to just think about technical fields, but there are different areas of focus that lead to different career opportunities. So
definitely.
it's important for them to do the research
Mm,
so that they can understand the level of training that comes along with any of them
yes,
that's
exactly.
required. But yeah, definitely math. I think what I can safely say is math helped me build my analytical skills and critical
Mm,
thinking.
yes.
Because once we started having numbers and letters, it really started to get crazy. But at the end, it almost like became like a second language because I could sit and do, differential equations. I know exactly what it is happening. But if somebody else walks in the room, they haven't a clue what it is. But
Mhm.
it's really good in person. You have to love math to get into these technical fields because, like you
Okay.
said, on the girls, everything, as far as your studies with physics, even biology and chemistry, we
Yeah.
need math.
Yeah.
So that's the universal language of an engineer. So
Yeah.
and again, you already gave us your background in terms of, how you became interested in math and science, essentially, and it's taking you down the path. But why is it important in terms of us as women being involved in STEM?
Yes. For us as women getting into STEM, I like to think of it as somebody's paving the way, and then we need to continue doing that. Because what I noticed, at least for myself growing up in Bermuda, was that when I was getting into science and robotics, of course, my grandfather, the late Kenyatta Young, he's a trade unionist at the BIU, and then my mom, Angela Young, is a marketer of 25 years of experience. Hope I'm getting this right, sweetie. I always get the year wrong, but of course, they were always supporting me and challenging me and building that curiosity, but neither of them worked in the fields that I was interested in, so like genetics and robotics. So I didn't have anyone that looked like myself or that was already working in the field, and I didn't meet them until I was 16, and that was Dr. Krika Weldon. That was the first person, and then after that, it was kind of like silence until I got to university. So
Mm-hmm.
the reason I think women in STEM are so important is because we're paving the way for the younger version of ourselves, really, for those of us with curious minds and those of us that are fascinated by the stars or those of us that really just love playing with things and figuring things out, like Lego, for example. You're really, as a woman in STEM, paving the way for them. And that's what I find so important because there's not a lot of us out there. And or at
Mm-hmm.
least there are quite a few, but not all of us are outspoken or not all of us are easy to find, which is something that I really want to be able to highlight because it took me quite a while to find my own mentors until I got to university. And then
Mm-hmm.
but I think that that's too late, to be quite honest. Like, if
Yeah.
you're a young girl in STEM and you're like, "Oh, I quite like this," but you don't see anybody that looks like you or that is similar to yourself and what you're loving, then it can be disheartening if you don't
Yeah.
see anybody else that's doing that already. That's why I
Yeah.
think it's quite important. Representation is
It's
so
key.
crucial.
Hmm.
It's key.
Yeah, it is. And again, I can relate to that because, in when I went to college at the University of Central Florida, I was sometimes only female
Yeah,
in my classes and sometimes a double minority. So,
yeah,
black female in my classes. So
yeah,
it's definitely, there's been progress that we've seen over the years. So and you're still telling me that it was kind of lonely. So again,
yeah,
it's one of those things where it's still more work that has to be done, and you're absolutely on point it's important that role models are presented
yeah,
so that persons can say, well, if she can do it, then I can do it too. And you actually can go in some instances to someone to find out, well, how did you do it, how did you get into this particular field, and they can share their interests and encourage them along the way, because that's like a big thing for me. I want to see more women in project management, specifically here in the territory, because it's a lucrative career, one, and I think as women we are more inclined by nature when it comes to problem solving,
mm,
good communication skills, strong leadership, all of that type of all that skill set that's needed. So, I think just by default, in a way, we are um, designed for success.
yeah,
Let
definitely.
me put it like that. Yeah, and is again just to get the training and to follow up. So
Mm,
that's real cool. So tell us about, I guess, the podcast, because I think that's your platform that you're using to get the word out about careers in STEM and encouraging the women and women to become practitioners in the fields.
yes. Okay, so I love this part. So, I am the founder and creator of my own podcast, which is called Cameron's Lab Dive In, and the Cameron's Lab, platform sorry, it's a little bit warm in here now. So the Cameron's Lab Dive In platform well, Cameron's Lab platform really started around, my genetic study with Dr. Krika Weldon back in 2019. So when I was launching it with her, you can still remember us walking down, like, near the HSBC Bank in Bermuda, and I was like, "Well, I only need 25 people for this experiment." Sorry, to reel it back. The genetics study was for, my IB diploma back in high school, so that second year, so I only actually needed 25 experiments to complete it, but talking
Mhm.
to Dr. Weldon, she was like, "Why don't we do 100 people?" I was like, "Okay." So, that really was, definitely for me, a turning point into thinking outside of the box and thinking outside of what was necessary, and the
Mhm.
podcast is one of those things that's me also thinking outside of what's necessary, because I guess, I could potentially as a student just keep posting on LinkedIn and hoping that somebody sees it, but in my opinion, students need to be shown over and over again and also from a variety of different voices. It's kind of like if you're hearing your parents' voice all the time telling you, "Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that," and then suddenly somebody else says the same thing, you're like, "Oh, well, it all makes sense now. I probably shouldn't do that, or I should
Yeah.
probably start learning a little bit more about that." So it's
Yeah.
good to have different voices or different opinions to kind of give you that new perspective, and that's what I wanted for my podcast. So it's really just an opportunity for me to give students what I wish that I had when I was growing up and getting into STEM, which was people to listen to, people to get advice from, and I really just kind of built my network around that. So the podcast launched back in October 2023, and since then I've been going to different conferences across, I want to say across Europe now, yeah. So quite a few here in London. That was the COGX. I've been to Wired Health, one in Munich, which was the DLD conference, and then I went into another one with the podcast. It was my first time going with press accreditation. It was in Cannes in France. That's where they held the film festival. And
Okay.
then most recently was in Paris for Vivatech, and that was pretty exciting for me as well. So with the podcast, like I said, I really wanted to bring it to students because that's something that I really wish that I had. And then building upon that, most recently, I've launched a new virtual conference that's just for girls and women in STEM. This one's just for the girlies. So it's
Okay.
called the Link Up. And with the impressive guests that I've been meeting at these conferences, other students have reached out to me and they're like, Cameron, I love this. Like, I love the guests, but how do I connect with them? How do I meet them? And
Mhm.
so that's where I really wanted to launch this because it's an opportunity for students to really connect with the speakers rather than at a conference where you just have to kind of hope that you meet them after the stage and just wait nearby. So I wanted to give them the chance to really engage with them and also learn from them a little bit beforehand. So I
Okay.
have 7 panel sessions that are based around robotics. Well, the first one is on social robotics, and then we have AI, space, and genetics to give students as much of a wide range as I could. And so in the first 45 minutes, it'll be a panel discussion between me and my impressive guest list. And then the next 15 minutes will be about the students. So they'll get the chance to unmute and really talk to the people about whatever questions they might have and talk about career opportunities, their university courses, what they might be interested in, and just the things that they were learning for those first 45 minutes. They can finally start talking and connecting because they'll have the speaker's full attention. This is
Yeah.
one of those really rare, unique chances for them to speak with somebody in their field in a comforting in like a safe environment, which is not something that I see often.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very key in terms of again the exposure
Yes.
because we might listen to a podcast, read a book, watch a documentary, but having that engagement or that interaction is very key, and you're able to get questions answered, right away. So that's
Exactly.
that's awesome. So is that something you're saying you're doing annually?
Hoping to do it annually. The first one will be on August 9th, so you can register on
Okay.
my website, cameronslab.com, for anyone listening. So
Okay.
that one is completely free as well because I didn't want it to be have any cost associated with that because like I said, I think things like this should be free. Accessibility is really important to me as well as representation, so I wanted to make sure that it was free for my students so anyone can attend. It's mostly for the girls though. Sorry guys. You guys have
Right.
tons of other conferences, but this one is just for the girls.
Okay. And so all the guests are going to be women,
Not all of
or
them.
is it going to be
Um,
mixed? Okay.
It'll be a mix. So I do have one session where it's completely women, and that's my aerospace panel. So that one is
Mm-hmm.
called "To Infinity and Beyond," based on the Toy Story quote, and it's all about space and technology and showing them what really a broad field that is. Because I feel like you hear space and you think, "Oh, I'll just have to get in
Just
a rocket
asking.
and go there." Just
Yeah, just
astronauts, yeah. But it's so diverse, there's so many different things. Like,
asking.
when I first met these ladies, it was at a dinner party that I was invited to because of my podcast. So again, it's opening up doors for myself, and then I would like to open those doors for other students. So just listening to them, these 2 women bouncing ideas off of each other about space, like, "Oh, did you hear about that rocket launch back in whatever time?" Like, "Oh yeah, I was on that team talking about da da da," and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Whoa."
Yeah.
Like, you mean it's not just astronauts? Like, there's biomedical engineering even in space, and you can look at
Mhm.
electronics and robotics and AI, and it's just every field that you can think of is most likely going to space. So I
Yeah.
really wanted to have a panel that showed that to students, to show them like if you're interested in space, you don't have to limit yourself to being an astronaut and then think that's unattainable. There are
Yeah.
so many other career paths for them to go through, and that's what that panel will be all about.
Awesome. I love that. I think I also read in your bio that you had a virtual internship with a Colombia-based aerospace company.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well, that was me, honestly, that one was just after the pandemic or just
Mhm.
as it's, like, cooling down in 2021, that summer. So, I found it because I was looking for experience, and I really wanted to build up my coding skills. So, I was just looking on online, honestly, looking for different internships that I could find, and then this one had showed up. So, when I applied for it, I was very honest with them. So, to give you a bit more background, the company is called Nediar,
Mhm.
and as you mentioned, they're an aerospace company based in Colombia. And the internship was going to be completely in Spanish, which was okay because I am fluent in Spanish. And
Okay.
so I was able to communicate with them, and I was completely honest. I was just like, I have good coding knowledge because I have experience with HTML and Python and CSS and everything, but I don't
Mhm.
know anything about C sharp, which was the main programming language for this
Amazing.
internship
Okay.
because it was all about augmented reality, and that was, like, an app that they wanted me to develop. I said, "But I don't know anything, but I will spend the time, I will take the time and learn it before the internship occurs." They were like, "That's good enough for us." And so they let me in, and I spent the whole internship developing this app and then also developing a guide in both English and Spanish for users to use, and the
Mhm.
app itself was also in English and Spanish, which was quite interesting because they would ask me about the English audio, like, "Is this correct?" And I'd have to say, like, yes or no if it was a little bit off in the things that they were translating. That was pretty
Mhm.
fun as well. So I ended up leaving the internship not not I did originally didn't know anything, but then I left also giving them a new method of changing the languages in-app, which was pretty exciting for me because I was able to showcase that I had learned the language to quite a high level to be able to introduce a new method. That was pretty cool for me as well.
Awesome. So that was really a great not just a good internship. That was a great internship.
Yes, definitely.
So how
Really
long
good
was
for me.
it? How long
Um,
was it?
I think it was either 2 or 3 months. Yeah,
Okay. Well,
it
that's a
wasn't
lot.
super
So
long, but
you
it was
did
we got a lot done in that
the
time.
Anna guide bilingual in 2 months. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah,
Girl, you're awesome.
definitely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. That is
Thank you.
awesome. So in terms of the app, you said it's augmented reality. What exactly did it do?
Oh, yes, okay, honestly, I can't go too deep into it, but
Yeah.
I feel pretty cool to be able to say this, but I actually I actually can't describe too much about it, but it was a for a product in their company, and so
Okay.
basically when you scan with augmented reality, for those of us that don't know, it's when you can scan a specific picture or perhaps, like, if it's already in the app that you press a certain button, and
Mhm.
then a model will pop up, and you're able to look around it using the camera on your phone.
Okay.
So this was a product that they had, and I was able to, by scanning their logo, the product would pop up, and then you could click through the different menus to look at, a little bit more insights into the product. So it's giving
Okay.
you, both an English and a Spanish description, audio and also visual.
Okay. Awesome. That is excellent. I love
Yeah.
that. You're well versed.
I like to try everything.
It sounds like it's like, oh, I was on the internet and just came across.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pandemic, you didn't have much going on, so I understand.
Yeah,
It
definitely,
was the
exactly.
pandemic. We were blaming on the pandemic. All right. So what are you hoping to do with your biomedical degree when you're done?
So
Next for you.
I like to think of my biomedical engineering degree as more of a stepping stone towards my ultimate career goal because it's not biomedical engineering. I'm so sorry to the biomedical
That's the
engineering.
starting point. Well, obviously, after what you explained, I'm not surprised. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Engineering
Um,
degree, yes, marrying.
yeah,
Okay, what's
you
next?
never know. I'm an aspiring, surgeon and robotics engineer. So
Okay.
when I first wanted to go into that, and I said it, I was looking online, like, again, of course, are there any degrees that say surgery and robotics engineering? And of course, no, there aren't any degrees that say that. So you have to do medicine first. I actually managed, when I was back at BHS, we had a TEDx, it was TEDx Bermuda. I'm not sure if you were aware of that one, but we had a TEDx talk back
Okay.
in Bermuda. And
Mhm.
one of the speakers was Dr. Ayana Howard. So she was one of the professors at Georgia Tech. And
Okay.
that was also my first introduction to a Black woman in STEM that was doing robotics and working in the field that I wanted to. So of course I jumped on that opportunity to meet her and talk to her. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
I wanna do this, like, this is what I want, but I don't know how to get there. That's another thing I think is so important for students to have that opportunity.
Hmm.
So I was able to do that, and I asked her, and she said, "Well, why don't you try out biomedical engineering? Because that's basically the combination of medicine and the engineering that you're interested in." That's why I ended up doing this degree, and I love it so far. I think it's really interesting. But
Hmm.
later, I hope to continue going. So in September, I'll be doing my master's in AI, and then after that, I'm hoping to do well, I will be doing, God willing, medicine. And then
Okay.
from there, I will be getting surgically trained. And I would like to be the person that not only makes the robots, but also is able to work with them in my surgeries. So
Okay.
that's the
So
goal.
you'll be one of those doctors that essentially because I've kind of seen some documentaries or stories about robotics assisting during different types of surgeries because
Yeah.
the robots now can be even more precise
Yes, exactly.
as it relates to certain surgeries, and even I guess along the lines of laparoscopic, which is where it's least invasive,
Yeah.
so we don't have to cut you open
Yeah.
to get in there, because again we've designed robots that we're able to use to do those types of surgeries now. So it's like this is where tech meets the medical world,
Yeah.
and helps to keep us, I guess, maintain our health,
Yeah.
because then things that may have taken longer recovery times because of the invasiveness of certain surgeries, you
Mm,
actually recover quicker. So
exactly.
it's along those lines you're looking at. Okay.
Yes. So, I originally heard of it as, when they were introducing things like telesurgery, so that
Mm-hmm.
would definitely be using more laparoscopic surgical robotics, for example, the Da Vinci robot, which I still really wanna see in person. But, yes, a more less invasive, and also with telesurgery, I was thinking more of the Bermudian healthcare system, because
Okay.
quite a few of our people have to go. I'm pretty sure it's similar in other parts of the Caribbean as well, but you have to go abroad if you have a quite complicated surgery, for example, if your back or anything neuro, then you have to be sent overseas. But
Okay.
with robots like this, for example, Da Vinci robot or anything else that's more telesurgery based, and the surgeon doesn't necessarily need to be there. It
Mm-hmm.
could be somewhere else, and you wouldn't have to travel. You know,
Okay.
Doctor so and so from whatever amazing country, or perhaps myself, will be able to
Yeah.
operate on you from a completely different space. So
Awesome.
it's things like that that I hope to be a part of one day.
I didn't realize we had gone that advanced with it. So we
Yeah,
have telehealth robotic surgery.
yeah,
Wow.
it's so cool.
Wow. Yeah, that's major. And then even thinking about again the biomedical engineering staff at the hospital that has to maintain that machine,
Exactly.
and the nurses that assist the doctor virtually, so to
Robot,
speak.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's the robotic doctor, so to speak. That's amazing. I hadn't realized, in terms of that's where we are now. Because
Yeah.
usually when we hear telehealth, we're thinking doctor on the screen,
Mhm.
you're explaining to them what's wrong with you. You might upload some results from the test, and then, you get your diagnosis and a prescription.
Yeah,
But we're well advanced now.
quite.
Wow.
I don't know if
That's
they're operating like this in quite a few places, but I know that at least it's starting out to get more, like,
to get
definitely
there.
being researched a lot more now.
Okay. Yeah, and again, like you're saying, the doctor might be in Europe, and the surgery
Mm,
can be performed anywhere in the world.
exactly.
Because specialists, it's costly to move a specialist around
Yeah,
to do certain things. So it's definitely something we have to, definitely pay closer attention to, I would say,
mm,
especially in our region, because then it opens up access
yeah.
to medical care that we may not have been able to have access to before. So that is awesome. So how long is this going to take you though?
Uh,
Like you want to be in the theater for another 10 years.
yeah, I'll definitely be a student for life. I've accepted it now. Just gonna
So
keep
she's like,
learning, keep
no.
going.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you have more time to do podcasts because, as
Yeah,
soon as you start to get deep into medical school, it's like, you will be reading a lot more.
yes.
It'll definitely be all the medical books. So,
Exactly.
but that's amazing. I really appreciate your spirit and your drive. Congratulations in advance, and make sure
Thank
when
you.
you have all this um sort it out, that you let me know.
Definitely. Give you a call.
That you're practicing and your shingle is out.
Yeah. Be operating and then fixing it later.
Yeah, definitely. Just do. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, it kind of started breaking up for a second, so I was waiting for it to settle. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yeah, I think we yeah, I'm hearing you now. Just so we have I need to do something really quick. All right. So yes, now is a good time for me to pause and say again, thank you to our media partners across the region that carry our broadcast or replay and or replay. It all depends on what's happening at any given time. So thank you to Cayman Mall Road Facebook page, Radio TCI, Montserrat ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands CBN Radio, FM 90.9, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Sabre, PJFE FM 93.9, and Barbados' CBC Channel 8. Thank you again for partnering with us at Territories Talk to continue to unite and inform our overseas and the Caribbean family. So, if you're just tuning in, tonight's topic is about women in STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and math. And with me, I have an amazing young lady by the name of Cameron Young. And she is, I would say, a fanatic when it comes to STEM because, her whole life has been steeped in it. But I really, again, I really applaud what it is you're striving to accomplish because it is something that's important, especially for us in the region as Caribbean women, and becoming the role model that you desire to see. So that's, I definitely want to say I salute you for that, especially at a young age, because it's something where sometimes, we think about giving back when we're older, thinking that we need to be older to do these things, but that's not necessarily the case. So you touched on something when we started talking about in terms of your educational journey and your interests about artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
So again, we can't talk about tech and not talk about AI.
so true.
So let's give the layman's definition of what AI is and again how that is affecting us even from now. I would say
Mm.
AI has been around a very long time, but we have not been aware of it to the level. And usually when we hear robots, that's when we start to think about it. So share a little bit about that.
Sure.
Sure.
I think the big boom for AI really kind of came, at least to the public, when they launched ChatGPT, and that's when it kind of boomed and everybody was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what is this AI thing?" But like you said, it's been around for quite a long time. So AI just stands for artificial intelligence, and there are quite a few levels to it. So you have things like machine learning, deep learning, and oh my goodness, there's one more thing. It'll come back to me later. So this is just really just scientists and data scientists, really, and that's another new term that we're just starting to talk about a bit more. But it's using they're trying to replicate the way that we think as people. So, for example, you have an input and an output. So it's just as easy as putting in some information, and then letting it know what you want to come out of that. So in
Mhm.
between that, now that things get more complicated, is what you would call the neural network. So it's more the different, like more hidden layers that are in between that do the different
Mhm.
decision making that you would want the AI to do. So for example, if you want to have an algorithm that could, well, I don't know, process some data about your genetics, and you'd be like, oh, I'm going to put in this person's DNA, like this person's genetic makeup, the data that I've collected, and these are
Mhm.
the different markers or parameters that I would want you to look out for. So, for example, does this person have blue eyes? If they do this. Or does this person have curly hair? Do this. I'm just realizing I'm describing myself. But it's like looking at a different person, but and then at the end, you would have a specific output that you would want it to give you or some kind of classifier maybe that you're looking at. So it really depends on the kind of AI. There's different types. So you have like language learning models. So those are for things like ChatGPT. You have more algorithms like recommendation things like Netflix and Amazon. Like if you ever wondered "Well, how did it know that I was looking for this random microwave at 12 a.m.?" Because they're
Yeah,
tracking and they can tell.
exactly. Exactly. And I
Um,
think
yeah,
for me that was one of the things I remember when I started to learn about big data.
yeah,
Because again, we would think about these things or speak about these things in terms of saying Big Brother is watching.
yeah,
And as soon as we moved into cloud-based applications, so everything is in the cloud,
yeah,
it became now this big data warehouse
yes,
where somebody, people don't have enough time to sit down and would be able to go through all of this. But this is where now the computer starting to come in to play to do these analyses and able to
yeah,
come back, and the ads now become more targeted. So it's like,
yeah,
because I was shopping on JCPenney looking at a particular thing, I'm on a different website, and all of a sudden now I'm seeing all these JCPenney ads, and this is
yeah,
this is what's happening basically in the background when persons hear about algorithms, and
yeah,
algorithms are essentially artificial intelligence. I think one of the things to remind our viewers of tonight would be, our audience, listening audience on the radio as well, is that the probably the biggest technology tool that you have at your disposal every day is your phone. Because when
mm,
we think about where phones have come from, and again, by virtue of calling it a smartphone, it's letting you know there's some thinking that's happening autonomously, without your assistance behind the scenes, because of how we've designed and engineered the phones over the last 20 years. So
mm,
it's and Alexa, all of that is AI,
yeah,
even without them saying, calling it that. But that's what AI starts to look like in terms of in our daily lives, how it starts to engage with it, and what's it happening.
mm,
So from your perspective, and what your research has been, what would be, I guess, some of the advantages as well as disadvantages, if any, for us here in the region or globally as it relates to AI?
mm,
Because I often say to people, and it's something even in project management, that, when I listen to different commentaries, they're always encouraging you as a PM, learn it, because it
mm,
is a new skill set that we will need as project managers to help with various aspects of managing projects of various types. So it's not just about IT projects, but when it comes to do things like, again, analysis of schedules, looking at issues on projects, developing risk strategies. All of these are things though that we can actually get AI to help us with,
yeah,
to again, be more specific about what strategy we can possibly use, because it's able to analyze these large volumes of data
mm,
and give you back a response. So that's essentially what Chat GPT does. It's like,
mm,
give me a press release on XYZ, and then it comes back and it pulls it all together, but it's pulling, data from different sources and basically putting it together in that way. So, what, let's start with the advantages of AI to us,
mm.
and how it's helping us.
Sure. I think that one of the things, like you mentioned yourself, just needing to learn more about AI. So I think
Mhm,
one of the big misconceptions is everyone's thinking AI is going to replace us, but it's not necessarily the AIs that are going to replace us. It's more the people that understand it and know how to use it well that are going to
mhm,
start doing a little bit better. I'm not going to say replace, but
mhm.
definitely be more. It's more advantageous to us. So as
Yeah.
you said, AI, one of the things it feeds off of data. So whatever data that you want to be able to give it, it can easily read that much faster and process and analyze it much faster than we could. So that's one of the things that I would definitely find more advantageous of it, especially for us in the Caribbean, because we have so much data. Like the Caribbean is such a diverse community. Like there's so many different types of backgrounds for people, ethnicities. All of us are coming from different places, and there's a lot of data just in the Caribbean alone. So for
Mhm,
something like, for example, an AI to be able to process that and give us back the data that we're looking at, I think is really fascinating, really important for us, especially because nobody's looking at it, or at
mhm.
least nobody has been looking at it much in the past. It's been quite overlooked, which I think goes more into the disadvantages. So I'm going to hold back a little bit on that opinion. But
Yeah.
so more like companies like, for example, Kara Genetics, which is run by my mentor, Dr. Weldon. So she's one of the first to start looking at the data in the Caribbean, but from a genetic standpoint. So it's
Mhm.
looking at things like that and how it can benefit us in terms of things like healthcare and even in small tasks, like you said, like schedule management. So it's
Mhm.
just looking at how it can improve not only us as a people in terms of health, but also maybe improving our own businesses. Things that we may not need to be able to not need to do ourselves, things that we could be automating rather
Yeah.
than taking a million hours to be like, oh, calling so and so and being like, "Oh, do you remember when this happened back in the day?" Like, we don't have to
Mm,
remember. The AI can remember. As long as you give it that data, you give it what it needs to know, then it can process that data for you and quite quickly as well.
yeah. Yeah, it's very key. And like you said, this for me, I think where we are again in terms of encouraging our high school and college students is similar to when you had to start to learn about Microsoft Office
Yeah.
and becoming computer literate and knowing what that meant. It's now about, again, there's another skill set that we need to develop
Yeah.
because, this is where technology is moving to.
Yes,
So
exactly.
just like we moved away from the push button phones that you can rarely find, there's still a few out there, but everything
Unfortunately.
is touch screen. And I remember being very hesitant about that because I'm like, well, suppose the screen goes bad, then you can't use the
Mhm.
phone because you can't touch the button, to make a
Exactly.
call. So, and obviously there were glitches in the beginning, and over time, though, it's like we don't think twice about buying a touchscreen.
Yeah, exactly.
If we were to walk into a cell phone store and see a push button phone, we're gonna just completely go past that and say, hey, what's this?
Yeah.
And again, it's all strictly a bright, vivid screen where it
Yeah.
has all these bright buttons on it that we can't physically touch, but we have made the adjustment from a learning perspective and accepted it for what it is. So why do you think some persons might be fearful of AI? I guess apart from the narrative that's sometimes out there in terms of it's replacing you, because I see it as something to where, when factories were, we say automated, but again, machines were put in that had to be run by people still, because
Yeah.
machines aren't running machines just yet. And so that keeps the human element still in the loop.
Yeah.
But what would you say in terms of encouraging persons in terms of embracing whether from a study standpoint in terms of career or even in the job place.
Mm. What I would like to say is that I think that the reason that so many people are so worried about AI now is that because a lot of the things that were being shown is that, like you mentioned, most machines, like even when we started automating, there was still that human element. But
Mm,
I think now there's quite a few use cases where you can see like AI and robotics working autonomously, like, it doesn't need necessarily a person to man it except for, like, maintenance and, of course, like, making sure that nothing goes wrong, but for
mhm,
the most part, most of these things can start to run a little bit more autonomously, and that's a little bit nerve-wracking to people to be able to see, like, for example, for my own conference, I have a robot speaker that's going to be there, and he runs on an LLM, so you ask him questions, and he responds
mhm,
back to you based on those questions, so it's scary for people to see something that's working by itself that doesn't necessarily need a person's prompting as much as you would expect it to be, like, expect it to feel comfortable. That's something that
yeah,
I would say really makes people nervous. But to encourage people is that I would say if you're not getting involved in things like that, then you wouldn't understand it by the for example, if we all kept using, like, the telephones with, like you said, the push
mhm,
button phones, and then
mhm,
we just completely stayed away from the touch screens, it'd be much harder for us to integrate now than if we had just started embracing it a little bit early. So what I
yeah,
would say to encourage people is that it's important to whether or not you're going to use it, it's important to start at least understanding how it works because
mhm,
it's happening rapidly and I don't think that there'll be any slowdown anytime soon on the AI train. So I think it's really important for students especially to start learning not if not how to use it, well, definitely how to use it, but at least learn a little bit more about how it works rather than just kind of ignoring it and being like, "Nah, that's kinda scary. Throw that away." That's kinda
yeah,
like, for example, when you first get into algebra and then they introduce letters and you're like, "What is that?" So you wanna throw it away, but
yeah,
obviously if you do, then you won't get to develop anymore. So
mhm,
that's why I'm thinking for students at least and also for people back home to just get yourself learning a little bit more about it and start asking questions
yeah,
because that's the best way to learn about it and to make yourself more comfortable is to understand how it actually works.
yeah.
There's a
Yep,
lot of misconceptions as well.
yeah, that's definitely key. And then platforms like yours that you're using to bring more awareness and education, and especially for us in the region because we have so many challenges that I think that again with engineers using AI
Mm,
that we can come up with a lot of the solutions that we need and a lot faster and more effective and being efficient in terms of what we have to scale because We often talk about our size being a disadvantage comparing ourselves to the rest of the world. But when we think of it, our size actually is our advantage. Because if we can scale what they do at the larger level, we actually can become even more efficient than them.
I agree.
In terms of what we're able to produce and how we're able to go about things. So I definitely would love to see it more STEM in our schools. I know here locally in the Virgin Islands we have been hearing a lot more about STEM and its introduction into the school curriculum. So, but it is something in terms of as a career, not just as a subject,
Yes.
to help make the connection of, we study this because this is what the end result is in terms of the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And that, it's available to anybody.
Definitely.
I might be biased when I say, maths is an easy subject, but I don't know. I probably enjoy it more than English, and it's kind of one of those things. Like
Ah,
we tend to think of it by default. Those classes should be easier, but once you have an interest in something, and again, it's about your ability applying yourself.
yeah,
And
definitely.
I hope persons when they hear you speak and present that they understand. It's all about application because again,
Mm,
for what you have accomplished at your age already, again, it's very impressive and it's not to say, you're coming from some special background, but that this is what you took an interest in and pursued your passion. So definitely keep that up. And again, like you're saying, open the door and bring along some people along the way. So
definitely.
that's a key part. All right, as always, we run out of time. The conversation gets good when we get into the end.
Every time.
I want to let you share so about where persons can find your podcast
Sure.
and also about the conference. So start with the podcast in terms of where they can tune in.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed our time together, and of course, the conversation always gets good at the end of the episode. So you can find more about my podcast on. I have a website. It's cameronslab.com, and I'm on all of your favorite podcast platforms. So especially Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but also YouTube. So all my episodes get posted onto there. You can
Mhm.
also find me on Instagram, where it's Cameron's_lab, and then TikTok, it's Cameron's Lab. And then with the conference, you can register on my website, cameronslab.com. So that's going to be a virtual conference again, just for girls and women in STEM. So the
Mhm.
point of that again was to bring my community that I've been gaining since leaving Bermuda and since kind of getting to know different people here in university at the conferences to bring that community to other girls in STEM, specifically back home in Bermuda and of course
Mhm.
across the Caribbean, because like I said, like you said, we're kind of small and that can be an advantage for us, so it's easier for us to connect with people and get to know each other. But then again, if there's nobody in the bubble, then it's a bit harder to get outside of it. So I would like to bring more people into our bubble so that we can get to know more people and learn a little bit more from each other and also from those of us that are going and traveling overseas and doing all this cool stuff. So that's
Yeah.
what the conference is for, to give students a chance to engage. So again, it's called The Link Up, and you can register on my website, cameronslab.com. It's going to be on August 9th. And of course, there'll be replays later, but it's better to get it live so that you can actually engage and speak with the speakers and
Mhm.
kind of get those connections in for yourself.
Okay, so it's August 9th. So it's a 1 day conference.
Yes, just one day.
Okay, just 1 day. All right, well, we got to start someplace. That's okay. We're going to get to a whole week soon.
We'll get there.
Yeah. August 9th. Okay, I think
Yes,
that's at
add
the
it to
end
your
of
calendar.
our festival. No, I'm going to register because I want to hear the robotic speaker.
Please. You can
That's,
ask him questions as well. It's
yeah,
pretty cool.
you definitely piqued my interest as it relates to that. So I think, again, that's something we want to encourage persons. Cameron, what's it called? What's the website again?
CameronsLab.com. Also, it's Cameron with a K for those of us that are
Let
going to
me
put
put
us here.
that in our chat. Cameron Labs.
Cameron's Lab. I
The
think I'll
S.
put it in.
Okay.
Yes.
Labs.com. Okay. But yeah, definitely encouraging persons, especially our young people. So parents that are on here, please encourage your young people to register and be a part of this. It's
Definitely.
again, it's like they won't know necessarily the interest until we start to expose them to different things. So that's the plus
Exactly.
of events like this. And is it free or is there a cost?
Completely free. Yes. I want to
So
be able to link up with as many
yes, you
people as
did
possible.
say that. Yeah. So again, so this is an opportunity we shouldn't pass up.
Yes, definitely.
Conference. And is you're doing it from Bermuda or from the UK?
I'm coming home for the week, so I'll be doing it from home
Awesome.
back in Bermuda.
Awesome. That is awesome. Okay, so I placed the for persons who might be listening, I placed the link in the group
Yeah.
chat so they can always go back to our Territories Talk Facebook as well as our YouTube channel and pick it up from there. And
Yeah.
again, follow the podcast
Yes.
because I am sure now persons' interests are very piqued in terms of learning more. Again, this is one place where we can learn more about AI, biomedical engineering. The latest tech in robotics. What are some of what's probably the most interesting topic you've had on your show so far?
Ooh. I
Because
can't
I know
narrow it
you
down.
like everything. That was a hard question.
I can't narrow it down.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Okay,
been really
so
cool. I think if I had to pick, it would be actually something I did in collaboration with my university because through the podcast, they invited me to speak with them on 3 of their Breakthrough in AI panels. They had
mhm.
6. I was the host for 3 of
Okay.
them, and one of them was all about social robotics. That was really fun for me to be able to speak with some of my they weren't my professors necessarily, but they were still, like, really quite prevalent in the field and talking to them about what social robotics is and then what are the different, like, things that we've learned a little bit more about in the field. For example,
Mhm.
expressing emotions with a robot, like, do we have to feel connected to the robot in order to show it empathy or, like, should it be showing empathy to us? All these things are quite interesting,
Oh,
and I found that
really?
one
I
really
mean, I
cool.
was about to ask, but what is social robotics? But I know you started to get into it in terms of like literally socialization,
Yeah.
just like how we would have it amongst humans, and what that means now
Yeah.
in terms of non-human interaction.
Yeah,
Interesting.
human-robot interaction is fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah, listen to that episode,
there's a
everyone.
lot. There's a lot out there. So
Lots of good ones.
again, I love to see our young people, and again, we can become specialists
Yes.
essentially in the region that again our skills are able to be utilized anywhere in the world because this is the trend that we're seeing as far as the integration of AI into a lot of things that we're doing. So that's great to know. So Cameron, thank you for passing through today. Anything else you wanna tell our persons? And I will also need to tell you congratulations on graduating in advance.
Oh, thank you. Very excited for that one.
Yeah,
But,
right?
I guess to just kinda close it up is to just say I'm looking forward to linking up with everybody, hopefully on August 9th for my virtual conference, and I hope that you tune into the podcast as well, and that today's episode inspired more women to join STEM, because it's very fascinating and you can get really passionate about it as well, and there's more nerds like myself that you can talk to, so definitely reach out. I'm happy to talk robots with you all day.
Yeah. And again, the importance of networking. So, I'm really happy that you reached out and access to be a part of the platform to be able to get your message out, in a probably in a different space than you would normally be speaking to, but it is something again for us to pay attention to here in the region. It's not something for the rest of the world, but it is also for us to, be aware, educate ourselves about it, and to, for those math and science geeks, this is an opportunity to put that interest to use
Yeah.
from a career standpoint and also to give back to our communities because again it's like we're saying engineers do they create stuff they're a creative category that we never hear anybody talk about actually.
Yes, I love that.
So
That's
your
great.
architects, your designers, it's not just about fashion design, but our engineers are also part of that creative space in terms of, how we affect quality of life really,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
always seeking to improve it and innovate. So that is so great so that we're part of it. So again, Cameron, thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
through. We also want to thank all those who have been viewing Puerto Rico. Let me see who else we had. I had quite a people
Wow.
did the roll call. So we had Cayman, I think I saw Georgetown, Savannah, Georgetown, Bermuda,
Wow.
Devonshire, Bermuda. Greetings from San Juan. Thank you for tuning in, Miss Roslyn. And all those wherever else they're going to tune in after. Thank you for again tuning in to Territories Talk. We want to thank again and recognize our media partners across the region: Cayman, TCI, Barbados, Saba, Montserrat, the Virgin Islands, Bermuda is also part of our team. I think Anguilla is the only one that's missing, so we're actively working on that. So if anyone knows of a media house that would like to be a part, it can be virtual too on Facebook, that we'd be happy to hear from you. You can send us a message on Facebook or YouTube, and we will reach back out and make this happen. So again, on behalf of the host team, Miss Shirley Osborne, Mr. Chris Famous, I am Shayna Smith Archer from the beautiful Virgin Islands, saying thank you for being here with us. We'll be back. We're on here every other Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time. So just making sure we got the time zone straight. And someone said great show. So that's for you, Miss Cameron. So I'm sure they learned a lot. So that's what we're here to do. So until next time, let us continue to unite and inform our overseas territories and Caribbean family. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good one.